Hello there. So we are over halfway now in our book Cogheart, and we're going to be starting chapter 14. I don't know about you, but yesterday was certainly one of the best chapters we've read so far. My goodness, can you believe that Roach and Mould were so ruthless with Thaddeus, and now poor Lily, Malkin, Robert must head off into the wilderness all alone, both of them without adults that they can rely upon. Let's see what happens. They ran with stealth, not stumbling or stopping, just fleeing into the night, dark as the devil's mouth it was, and the wind was sharp as vinegar. Lily could not see her hands in front of her face and was forced to listen out for the ticking of Malkin's limbs as he made his way along the snow-covered path. The blizzard of flakes eased, and they were halfway up Brackenbridge Hill when the clouds parted and a milk-faced moon, one day's wax from full, appeared. The wind battered the frosted tips of nearby gorses and whipped cold air in through their clothes as they pushed their way up through the slope of deep drifts. They ran up the bank until a tangle of thick, thorny underbrush stuck up from the smooth white surface of the snow, blocking their path. Malkin led them around it, bounding through the white dust that came practically to his chin. Robert was fading fast, stumbling in and out of drifts, kicking at fallen branches until they showered snow. Lily could sense the anguish flooding off him. Water had soaked through the toes of her shoes, and her feet had started to numb. Worse still, her gloveless fingers were beginning to seize up with the cold. She stopped for a moment and pushed back her cap to look around. "We should rest. The trouble is, I don't know where." Malkin shook a flurry of flakes from his snout and licked his whiskers. "I came this way before. It looks different under all this white stuff, but I think I can find a place for us to stop." With that, he slipped off ahead, into the undergrowth. Lily and Robert stood leaning against each other, waiting for his return. Lily realised Robert hadn't spoken since they'd been on the roof. "That was a narrow escape," she said suddenly. "Back there at the shop. Look, Robert, I'm sorry what happened. If I'd have known..." "It's not your fault," he muttered. "Not really." He glanced at her, as if he wanted to say more. Lily felt her weariness lift for a moment, but when his face fell, it seeped back in with the cold. Another few minutes passed in shivering silence, then Malkin returned with news of an empty building ahead, where they might bed down for the night. "Fine," Lily said. "Let's go there." Hidden behind a copse of tall larch trees, the derelict mill straddled one end of a frozen pond. Its upper half was clad in moss-covered planks of wood that ended halfway down its height, like a skirt. Under this, fat red legs of brick, banked with snow, waded in the ice-cracked pond. An outhouse arched over a water-wheel, whose uppermost lattices were covered in dripping lattices were covered in dripping stalactites. Malkin slunk across an iron-railed bridge and approached the building. He slipped between two planks of wood nailed over the entrance and through a rotten gap in the base of the floor itself, his tail flicking as it disappeared into the dark. They stood at the end of the small bridge, waiting for him to return. Lily jigged and clapped her hands to keep them warm, and Robert brushed a shower of snow off the length of handrail. Malkin's nose poked back out through the hole. "It's clear," he barked. "I don't think anyone lives here anymore." "Well, now we do," Lily said cheerfully, trying to give them hope. It was almost as cold inside the old watermill as it was outside. As her eyes grew accustomed to the dark, Lily saw a space filled with gigantic cogs. Wooden workings spanned the room, connecting to a grindstone at the far end. A chain led up and up to a wooden trapdoor set into the roof above. In between the planks of the ceiling, weeds grew like a blackened upside-down garden. "It's like crawling inside the chest of some gigantic broken mechanical," Lily whispered to Robert. "Or the heart of a clock tower," Robert said. "My papa would have probably known how to work it. Be able to explain it all." "Mine too." Robert patted a cog connected to a shaft of wood. "These must have all turned once to grind corn, driven by that water wheel outside." She nodded. In the corner, against the driest wall, she spotted a pile of empty flour sacks, and they settled down on them to make a camp for the night. Lily dropped her bundle and watched Robert slump to the foot of the wall. Then she collapsed down next to him. She leaned back against a rough post, shivering in her shirt sleeves, and loosened the laces of her shoes. "Do you want the coat back?" Robert asked her suddenly. She shook her head. "No, you keep it. I'll use my blanket." She unknotted it from around the box and opened it out, spreading it across her legs. "We could share them both," Robert said, and he shuffled towards her and tucked the coat around her shoulders. Lily dragged the box between her feet and threw the blanket across his legs too. The silk lining of the coat gave off a sharp whiff that reminded her of Thaddeus's tobacco, and the blanket smelled of Papa and her home. Lily missed him, and her mamma too. Tiredness seeped through her bones. She took off her cap and put it against the wall behind her head to make a pillow, then shut her eyes and waited for sleep to take her. But instead, only a sickly feeling of emptiness came, and a slow, nagging despair. She tried to concentrate on the night noises. She ought to listen out anyway, just in case. The wind was up, and she could hear the creaking of the old mill, the strange, distant squawking of birds. Malkin's cogs gradually ticking to a standstill as he wound down for the night, and Robert's breathing soft and steady. Soon the sounds fell away, and she drifted into a deep sleep. She dreamed once more of the accident. The snow falling, the stone in her hand, Mamma's laughter, the box at Papa's feet, the two vehicles colliding with an earth-shattering crash that split the night in two, her mother's body tipping forward, flying through the carriage windscreen, and her own tiny frame tumbling after it. City lights smudged the sky, blood and water smeared across her face as her body broke against the curbside, crumpling into the white drifts, inches from her mother's frozen form. Snowflakes coated her hair, cuts seared across her scalp, pain bloomed in her chest, unstoppable. Then another new part of the dream. She seemed to leave her body, and she watched from on high, floating above her static 6-year-old self, as Papa clambered out from under the overturned steam wagon, still clasping the box. She heard his hoarse screams whipped away by the blizzard. Another man appeared, limping through the fog, and he wrestled with her Papa, trying to take the box. Lily recognised his red sideburns, his fat cheeks, and his silver shining eyes. It was Mr. Mould. Papa fought him, screaming and shouting into his face, never letting go of the box until Mr. Mould seemed to take fright and ran off. Then Papa battled towards the bodies of his loved ones, Mamma and Lily, lying side by side like ragdolls on the road. Tears melted the snowflakes on Papa's face. He threw down the box and dropped to his knees in the snow. Then he scooped up his two girls in his arms, cradling them against his chest. Lily wanted to stay, watch more, but she felt herself waking, detaching from the dream, as if an umbilical line of mooring had loosened inside her, and she floated off. She tried to call to Papa, but no words came. Tried to swim back, but a blizzard of snow pushed against her, spiralling her upwards, melting the accident into a flurry of flakes. A cold, blank whiteness seeped into her bones, and she heard the thud of her pulse ringing in her ears. Lily woke with a cold, gritty taste in her mouth. The interior of the mill had grown lighter. A rising sun split the slatted boards of the wall with orange stripes. Lily's thoughts flashed straight from her dream to the burning shop. She glanced at Robert and was shocked to find him awake and watching her. He sat a little way off, with his back against the curve of a large wooden wheel, his chin on his knees and his arms hugged around his legs. His cheeks were streaked with sooty tears, and his dark curled hair was tangled with leaves and dust. "Nightmares?" he asked. She nodded. He leaned towards her. "I didn't sleep much either. It's all so different. I miss the ticking of our clocks. When I did sleep, I dreamed of Da and the fire. I don't want to think of how much it must have hurt." He took his penknife from his pocket and turned it over in his palm. "This is the last thing of his that I have. He gave it to me for my 13th birthday. A wave of sadness flooded Lily, and she wondered what she'd done to bring such misery down upon them. "Your dream was about your parents too, wasn't it?" Robert asked, putting the pocket knife aside. "Yeah." She fiddled with the blanket. Damp had soaked through into the wool. "How do you know?" "I heard you cry out their names." He took a deep breath. "What happened to your mamma? You said she was killed?" Lily nodded. His words floated, sharp between them. "What happened to yours?" she asked, trying to change the subject. Robert shrugged. "She left when I was very small. I don't really know where she is now. All I know is her name, Selina." He swung the coat around and put it on. "You said you were in a steam wagon crash." Lily shifted uncomfortably under the blanket. "I dream about it. The details are coming back to me. I used to think it was an accident. At least Papa talked of it that way. Now, because of his letter and the things I'm remembering in my dreams, I know that that was a lie." She scratched at her chest through her damp shirt. Her scar felt unaccountably itchy. She never liked to speak of the past, and no one had asked her about it in a long time. No one except Robert. He sat there, expectantly, staring at her, waiting for her to elaborate on her suspicions. She rubbed her hands together and massaged the stiffness from her neck. She should tell him the truth, at least what she knew of it. She owed him that much. "The crash was terrible," she said. The other steam wagon hit us on purpose. Mamma was killed instantly, and I was injured, but Papa was fine. He was the one who saved me. In fact, in my dream, he had the box. Someone was trying to wrestle it from him. I think it was mould." Robert gasped. Lily glanced down at the box. "After the crash, Papa nursed me back to health, healed my injuries. But with Mamma gone and all the awful things that happened, he didn't want to stay in London." "So you moved here?" "Yeah." She brushed her hair back from her forehead and wedged it away under the cap. "We came to hide in the country, but it was hard to live without Mamma. He was so lonely. We both were. So we made Malkin, to keep us company." Lily stood and crouched beside Malkin. She took his silver winder from her pocket, stroked his head softly, put the key in the hole in his neck, and wound it, feeling the fox's springs tighten. "Then Papa got me a governess, because he said we needed a woman around." "She was the one at your house?" Robert prompted. "No. The first three didn't seem to like being shut up in the house. They left. Then Madame Verdigris arrived. She and I never really got on. Papa ended up sending me to Miss Scrimshaw's academy on her recommendation, and she stayed on at home as our housekeeper." "I didn't know you went to some fancy academy," Robert asked. "Fancy's not the word for it." Lily finished winding Malkin and watched as he blinked awake. The mech fox yawned, smacked his lips together, and stretched like a cat. "I'll go and check ahead," he said. "Get the lay of the land." Then he stood and shook out his 4 black paws, and before Robert or Lily could answer, he leapt through the hole in the door and trotted off. Robert scratched his cheek as he watched the red shape disappear into the white outside. "I never went to school," he said finally. "Da taught me everything I needed to know, about clocks and chronometers, the business and what not. Of course, it's useless to me now." Lily didn't disagree. "He seemed a good man, your father." "Oh, he was. I only wish I'd been a better son, a better apprentice." She patted his shoulder. "Robert," she said, "I reckon you were the finest son and apprentice he could ever have wished for." "Thank you." He gave her a nervous smile and glanced at the box at her feet. "What on earth are we going to do now?" "I'm not sure." Lily stood and paced about between the broken cogs of the old mill. "But I think we should carry on with your Da's plan. We'll walk to the next town and catch a train to London. Then we'll go and see my godfather. Ask for his help." She kneeled down and pulled the blanket around the box once more. Then she stowed the hacksaw and the screwdriver in beside it. Robert watched her. "Have we got enough money for tickets?" he asked. "If we don't, we'll have to hide in a compartment somewhere. That might be a better plan anyway." Lily knotted the top of the blanket tightly around her few possessions. Then they sat in silence for a while, listening to the steady drip of water melting somewhere, which sounded like the tick of a clock. Finally, Malkin's snow-covered snout poked through the doorway. "The path ahead's clear," he yipped, But there's something else you should know. I think we're going to pass by the place where Dragonfly crashed. Robert jolted forward. Are the police there? He asked. Or Roach and Mould? Malkin shook his head. Neither. The whole site looks mysteriously empty. Untouched, even. Oh. Lily bit her lip. In that case, she said queasily, perhaps we should take the opportunity to go and investigate.